Bernie's 2020 plan would have increased spending by $53 trillion over 10 years.
What?
That would double the size of government. It would still add $25 trillion to the deficit, assuming that Bernie's math to pay it off was correct, which it isn't. You know that I have disliked this person for a very long time. Going back to whatever it is, 2014, 2015, when everyone was focusing on Hillary Clinton, I said, no, we're actually going to focus on Bernie Sanders on this show because he was the movement candidate. People believed that for some reason he was my God authentic. And he just wrote an op-ed. It's the same tired old talking points, but there's new context. It's really hard for Bernie Sanders to defend his policies on behalf of the people in the face of what is going on. Comment below if you the veil's been lifted a little bit, that even the most populist progressive leftists like Bernie Sanders, you acknowledge they have no leg to stand on, and we'll go through it point by point. But here you go. Bernie Sanders does have a long-standing history of bitching about Trump.
We've got to appreciate what's going on in the country. We're moving toward oligarchy. It will not surprise you when I tell you that Trump is lying, as he so often does. I mean, we will see whether Trump is going to keep any of the campaign promises he made to working people. This country under Trump is moving rapidly toward authoritarianism. You may have noticed that Trump is intimidating the media. A small number of very wealthy people who own the media, who in recent
media
months
bias.
have kind of caved in.
Your people,
Trump.
Bernie.
The president is operating in a very authoritarian, illegal, and unconstitutional way.
Does he brush his hair with a plasma orb from Spencer's?
Yeah. I don't think he just touches it on the way to the house.
All right.
It's like he comes to work with a motorcycle.
Yeah, exactly. You know he has one pant leg tucked in. I have to protect it from the gears.
That's right.
That's why his pant is tucked into his sock. He's not in a gang.
Yeah.
So he wrote this op-ed in The Guardian, and it's just, it perfectly crystallizes what the left is doing now and why it doesn't work. So I'll be reading this and going through it claim by claim. I think it's pretty important. So right away, he talks about, I will be doing town meetings in Omaha, Nebraska this Friday night, and Iowa City, Iowa on Saturday morning. Further in the coming weeks and months, I and other progressives will be holding grassroots events from coast to coast. Oh, grassroots. I mean, like the people who elected a president in spite of media interference, in spite of government interference, in spite of prosecutorial misconduct. That kind of grassroots? Is that what you mean? Or do you mean like the grassroots, like the Tea Party that wasn't funded from the top down in opposition to Barack Obama, and your party decided to audit those people? Mothers and fathers, that kind of grassroots? Okay, just want to make sure we're clear. All right. Why at this moment are we doing town meetings across the country, especially in conservative areas? The answer is obvious. Trumpism will not be defeated by politicians inside the D.C. Beltway. So not you. It will only be defeated by millions of Americans. Oh, right, they already voted. Let's go through the actual claims that this guy... It's really hard to claim that you're a populist when people have rejected you.
Yes.
Yeah, hugely. Not by a hair. Huge.
Also, Vermont, your cheese sucks. Wisconsin is better, and they're drunk.
Really drunk.
They're really drunk. Was it 49 of the 50 drunkest counties for all in Wisconsin?
In the top 10, I believe.
But Vermont is so left, it's almost right. Like I get stopped pissing on the side of the road, and nobody said, a cop went by, just waved at me.
No. Well, that's called the sex offender immunity. So that's where the progressivism comes back.
All right.
It's like...
Nick, he actually looked at you and was like,
Do you like what you see?
He said that on the PA system. Doing.
Sometimes I prefer auga. Hamana, hamana. Roll up my tongue.
He just should be paid like ball players.
Yes, exactly.
Only the one that fucked their kids.
Yeah, that's Bernie Sanders, because they're real heroes. They're real heroes, and they shouldn't be fired.
That's exactly.
And then he turns, of course, into, once he gets angry and he yells Gilbert Gottfried. You all know the history here. So, claim that he makes. I'll just read this from the computer. He says, Trumpism has significant control over large parts of the media from which millions of Americans get their information. Fox and Musk's platform X, among others, are not normal media outlets. Their basic function is not to cover the news, but to spread right-wing extremist ideology. Okay, here's the truth.
Oh, my God.
References all publicly available. First, let me ask a question. Okay, Fox and X. Okay, how about ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, CNBC, Google, YouTube, Meta, and up until last year, X? How about all of them? You have a problem with media bias now? All right, well, don't let these facts hit you in the teeth. The negative coverage of Donald Trump during the presidential races in 2024, it was 85% negative.
Jeez.
In 2020, he received 150 times more negative coverage than former Vice President Biden. These are observable. These are verifiable, quantifiable numbers. Links in the description. Not to mention the big tech censorship of Trump and conservatives. Zuck even acknowledged the coercion, and now he wants to apologize for it, while at the same time, of course, his constituents, or I guess his proxies, fund giant leftist organizations. Of course, we have the Twitter files, revelations. We've been demonetized on YouTube. So pretty much everything except for Fox and X. And by the way, Fox isn't all that right-wing, especially when you know what's going on with it right now. So what... Okay, let's assume that it's true. Again, ignoring ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, CNN, CNBC, Google, YouTube, Meta, and recently X. Okay, we'll ignore all of that. What's the solution? Bernie Sanders, you're talking about right-wing media? Oh, wait, oh, that's right. I know if we look at Bernie's policy, it's more funding for NBR, PBS, more regulation. Effectively, the same solution from the left as they have on everything right now, which is status quo, do the exact same thing, only more money, more money, more money.
Money, 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 money. Money.
Doesn't quite have the same catchiness.
Wow. The bass was good.
It was good.
Yeah, it was
good.
very nice.
Oh, that was a DEI hire. He's going to have a Jew on bass. It's automatically Seinfeld. No, not the crime intro.
Mike Huckabee on bass.
He's actually not bad. Yeah. All right. Next claim that he makes, and he starts getting more aggravated. He says,
Today, 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Millions are earning starvation wages. 85 million are uninsured or underinsured. Young people are unable to afford the cost of college. 25% of seniors live on $15,000 a year less. We have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth.
it's almost like this guy doesn't like America.
Yeah.
And we have a major shortage of low income and affordable housing.
Okay, here's the truth. Not all of that is true. Of course, you use different metrics. It's kind of like the infant mortality rate. But as far as the metrics he's using, you can irrefutably thank former Vice President Biden for that. Under Joe Biden, we saw an increase in people living paycheck to paycheck. We saw an increase in the number of uninsured and underinsured. And we saw an increase in childhood poverty. It actually more than doubled by the standards that Bernie is using here. As far as affordable housing, I don't know if you know this, Bernie Sanders. I know you advocate on behalf of the people, but tens of millions of illegals under Biden crawled over here, flew, crawled, whatever, swam if they could do that. I don't know if you know that that has an effect on the market as far as supply and demand, reduces the availability of affordable housing. And let's be really clear, public housing, which I know we'll get to in a bit, actually sucks. It concentrates poverty, crime, and it doesn't actually improve the lives of the people involved. So hold on a second. He bitches about all these things, the housing crisis, poverty. What's the solution from Bernie Sanders? Oh, wait, that's right. He wants more Section 8 housing. Oh, wait, that's right. He wants healthcare to be a human right. Oh, wait, that's right. He wants to increase Medicare, Medicaid, make it for all people. That's right. Do exactly what we have done and more money.
Money, 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 money. Money.
And then he starts getting...
And how many houses does he have?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. 3.
That was one was owned by the college from my wife.
Didn't it go bankrupt?
Shut up.
And he gets increasingly aggravated, like he has to fit this in.
Yes.
It's like he wants to claim to be a populist, but then can't help but touch on the most elite talking point that couldn't be more out of touch with the average American public. And that, of course, brings us to his claim on climate change, where he then says,
oh, and by the way, we're
losing our struggle against the climate crisis, an existential threat to the future of the planet! Son of a bitch! Here's the truth, Bernie. Climate policy, energy policies are the actual existential threat to the American way of life. I don't know if you know this, but for example, pausing leases on federal land and a lot of the climate agreements that we signed on to, that's a big part of cost ballooning under former Vice President Biden. You know, gas went up 48%. That kind of affects those people in poverty, you prick. Heating and oil, 44%. Electricity, 29%. Everything went up. Most Americans aren't concerned about a 1.6 degree rise in temperature. They wouldn't be able to detect it if it took place in this room over the course of the next 2 hours. They care about not being able to drive to work or buy groceries. You know, the stuff you minimize. And hold on, let's go back to this. What's the solution? I had to live through this, and Nick knows, right? You're just the party of no, Republicans. The solution here for Bernie Sanders, you can look at his policies. More Paris Climate Agreement. That was the Kyoto Protocol. I covered that in Cancun. It was the Montreal Protocol before that. More giant multi-international agreements that half of these countries who sign on to don't even honor. And of course, the countries who don't sign on to it, like China, they don't honor at all. And what does that do? Well, it affects climate basically nothing, as far as we know, something observable. But we do know that it increases the price of all goods and services for everyday Americans. So what would we want to do? That, and along with, of course, subsidizing more green energy, which, of course, invariably ends up running itself into the ground, bankrupting itself. I can give you examples like Solyndra or solar or wind. Effectively, the solution from Bernie Sanders is exactly the same thing, status quo, but more money. Money, 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 money! Money!
I like that one.
It's going to happen. You know, he gets a little riled up.
And then he goes into his favorite talking point.
The oligarchs. The oligarchs.
Okay, all right.
Anything 1%, I hate.
Yeah,
1% milk.
That's right.
Won't have it.
I won't have it. I'll do 2%.
My son graduated 1% of his class. I fucking don't talk to the kid no more.
I got a mortgage 1% rate. I said 2%. I said, wait, no. Wait. I tip 1% below the industry average. I tip 17%. You ever see that? He calculates the tip to the penny of 18%.
Break early.
He's the least generous member of our public servants you can picture. So here's the next claim that he makes. Again, you can go and read all of it at The Guardian. I just think he's a perfect whipping post, and he puts himself out there, and people on the left still actually, my God, believe in Bernie Sanders. He said, today the three major oligarchs, Musk, Bezos, and Zuckerberg, are worth $905 billion. That is more wealth than the bottom half of American society, 170 million people. And incredibly, since Trump's election, their wealth has grown by $217 billion. All right. Okay, all right. First off, guess how these people lean. Also, this is a small point. I don't have a problem with the wealth gap inequality. I have a problem with poverty, right? And sometimes you'll have a wider gap, but you'll have less poverty. So if you have a wider gap, but there are far more people in middle class or upper middle class income scenarios, that's better than having a smaller gap and everyone is relatively poor. So I don't even agree with the premise, but let's go through this. Here's the truth, Mr. Sanders. The biggest wealth transfer that has ever occurred in modern American history was during COVID, and it was engineered by the left. You complain about billionaires? Billionaires increased their wealth by $1.8 trillion. Wow. During the pandemic, lockdowns, main beneficiaries were the people you named, we eventually maimed, right? It's rich. But also BlackRock, Vanguard, these giant companies who you deem too big to fail, you and Elizabeth Warren, your socialist brethren, sister in Papa, and whatever it is that she calls herself today, is 1/100th Cherokee, less than me. Let's also remember 700,000, while there was a $1.8 trillion wealth transfer, 700,000 small businesses closed during the pandemic. Again, this is something that you supported, of course, because it was a big government program. We had to keep people safe, right? Too big to fail because you want control over BlackRock and Vanguard and, of course, the big banks. And, of course, too big to fail with auto manufacturers or the airline industry. Insert whichever organization or group is too big to fail here. You've supported it, even though you claim that you don't, because you've never met government overreach that you don't like. What is the solution? The solution, of course, is more of the same from Bernie Sanders and maybe some higher taxes, which, of course, favors these giant corporations who can absorb them, not the 700,000 small businesses that close. Effectively, the solution from the left is the status quo, same. Only more money. 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 He then goes on to say, this is where he starts getting really pious, his claim. It is absurd, unjust, and inhumane. That's right, I said it. That virtually all of the new wealth being created goes to the people who need it the least. All right. Here's the truth. Because Bernie Sanders, when he's talking about people who need money or wealth, he's really talking about what government redistributes because he doesn't believe in wealth created by private businesses. The truth is that the exact opposite is true. If you look at entitlements, which tell a very clear story, just in 2024, over $4 trillion, or 60% of the federal budget, was spent on entitlement programs.
Wow.
So again, what is the solution here when he is saying that new wealth is being created, goes to people who need it? I understand. I don't believe that we should have government engineered transfers of wealth to the giant companies too big to fail, to the Bezoses, to the Zuckerbergs, the people who you preferred for a very long period of time. I agree with that. But again, the solution from Bernie Sanders to fix the wealth disparity in this country is $4 trillion isn't enough. More and more status quo, Department of Education, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, entitlement programs, Section 8 housing, exactly what we've done, status quo, nothing different, only more money. Money, 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 money! Money! Here's the next claim. You can check all these references, and I encourage you to do so, that Bernie makes. I'll go back because my throat hurts.
In the richest country in the history of the world, we must establish that
This is his manifesto.
Yes.
healthcare is a human right, must be available to all regardless of income.
Before we move on, tell me the difference between a right and a commodity. Oh, wait.
Every worker in America is entitled to earn a decent income. We must raise the minimum wage to a living wage and make it easier for workers to join unions.
You know what's funny about that? I was around when you were fighting for 15, bitch. That's average now. Most people can get that within 2 weeks of work. What is it, 25? Is it 30? Is it 35? Seems like those think tank institutes, like The Economist, who said, when you raise the cost of minimum wage, you just arbitrarily inflate wages, you will inflate costs. What's the number?
Bernie, we must have the best educational system in the world, from childcare to vocational training to graduate school, available to all.
Okay, great. Over $2 trillion in the Federal Department of Education. Test scores are worse. What do?
We must address the housing crisis and build millions of units of low-income and affordable housing that we desperately need. We must create millions of good-paying jobs as we lead the world in combating the existential threat of climate change. And the last one,
we must abolish all forms of bigotry.
What a list of horse shit.
I don't even agree with the last one.
No.
Me either. That's freedom of speech, jerk off.
This is his manifesto.
All forms.
So the truth. Okay, all right. And by the way, you just look at the school issue there. $2 trillion Federal Department of Education. Since we have included things like Pell Grants and subsidizing college degrees, guess what? The costs have gone up dramatically. It hasn't worked. The solution would be more money. More money, even though several trillion isn't enough with school, more money, and eventually test scores will go up. Housing crisis, okay, just build millions of low income. Any of you ever been to Section 8 housing? That's a real question. Any of you ever spent time there? Not great. Create millions of good paying jobs. What they really mean by that is just use your taxpayer dollars. Just use your dollars, your tax dollars, to just create shovel-ready jobs. Like 70,000 new IRS employees.
Foreign-born workers or American workers? I'm
right,
confused,
that's right.
Biden did more foreign-born workers.
It's entirely foreign.
Yeah, so he leaned all the way that way?
All of his solutions, and I've just added it up and I've gone through it point by point, but let me be really clear about this. I'm not making it up. It's a matter of record. Bernie's 2020 plan would have increased spending by $53 trillion over 10 years.
What?
That would double the size of government. It would still add $25 trillion to the deficit, assuming that Bernie's math to pay it off was correct, which it isn't. It couldn't possibly be.
Holy crap.
And think about this for a second. This is where if you can't cut out Coca-Cola and Twizzlers and Chips Ahoy, I'm a Chunks Ahoy man, but some people still eat chips. Disgusting. Why take the less chocolate? It's their lost leader. You're basically stealing from them. The point is, if we can't get rid of that from Snap, you can't cut anything. Yeah. If we can't look at a $2+ trillion, not adjusted for inflation, cost with the Department of Education, worse test scores in both math and reading, then you can't declare anything to be a failure of government. If you can't look at COVID policy and say $1.8 trillion in wealth transfer to the top billionaires, you can't examine government policy and ever deem it to be a failure. For crying out, 70,000 new employees were added to the IRS under Biden. Donald Trump, from what I understand, just cut 6,000. That's not even a compromise. Plus 70, minus 6. Go screw yourself. How about that? How about none of this? How about all of them walk? People right now on the left, including Bernie, they're complaining, like, tax season is going to be chaos this year. Oh, yeah, you're going to. Oh, you know what I think it'll be? This is my guess. It'll be approximately exactly what tax season was before Biden arbitrarily added 70,000 new employees. You know, every single year ever before that. And maybe a little bit better because, we only took out 6. All Bernie Sanders, and he is emblematic of the progressive left, just some of them are better at lying to you. They point out problems, ignore that they created it, blame the right, try and scare you, demand bigger government, status quo on every single thing. Every single thing is status quo, change nothing, and more money. No wonder they have to actually defend the IRS. Money, 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 money! Money!
$52 trillion in additional spending.
Trump cut 6,000 IRS, right? That's 6,000 guns off the streets. They should be happy.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's not even close to a compromise. So like, this is totalitarian.
Not even a starter.
You added 70,000. We cut 6.
I thought it was 80. Wasn't it 80?
I think it was 78, and
Maybe
they fact-checked us because originally it was reported as agents, and they said, no, they're employees. Fine.
Auditors. There we go.
I mean, could there be anything more unpopular than defending the IRS? You'd be better off defending the SS.
Yeah. Half of his stuff would be better if the immigration policy was better in this country.
Sure.
And by the way, some of the stuff that he mentioned, I thought Obamacare was supposed to fix. Remember that?
Yeah.
Remember how Obamacare was supposed? What do we have? Like 30 or 40 million people. Now he's saying we've got 85 million or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Uninsured or underinsured. I'm like, well, hold on.
Yeah.
Your program isn't working. Obviously, can we go to a new one? No, we have to give you more money.
Well, it's what the left, they occupy as far as voters are the extreme ends of the bell curve. You get to a certain point where the super billionaires, with one exception, Elon Musk, you go through it, you go Bill Gates, you go Zuckerberg, you go Bezos. And I get that these people are out for their own self-preservation right now, but historically they have been rabidly left. And then you go to the poor, and I mean the poor who don't contribute anything, 47%, of Americans, I think now it's 43%, pay nothing in federal income taxes. They need those voters. The middle-class Americans, and by the way, that includes everyone making anywhere from $50,000 a year to $500,000 a year. They are overwhelmingly concerned. The people who pay taxes, the people who have to balance a checkbook. They don't care about you. When they say they care, they mean they care about a voting base. That's why the voting base is poor. What they mean is people who simply take and don't contribute. I am sorry, this idea that, it's shameful enough to be poor. You're shaming me more by telling me what I can and can't buy as far as food. No. You're not ashamed of being poor if you are living on welfare for a decade. You're not. You have no pride. We are going to treat you as a prideless human being who is perfectly content with taking from Americans who do have self-respect and work and go out and support their families. I'm sorry. People are down on their luck. Fine. We're not talking about cutting out eggs, milk, bread, necessities. That's the SNAP program. I think we should look at cutting it, but that's not where we are right now. Anyone out there who is embarrassed, you know who? Me. There was that. I was couch surfing, sleeping out of my car. I never ate healthier. Oats, got an air popper at a Goodwill, popcorn, eggs. At that point, obviously that one's not. Canned tuna, milk, baby food, fruit on sale. Every now and then I get a buck double or go to Baja Fresh because if I filled out a receipt for one of the fajita burritos, I'd get $2.50 off the next one. That would be once every couple of weeks. It was my treat. I'm sorry. People who need a leg up, not a handout, but who need a leg up, no one in this country has a problem with them. We're not talking about changing anything that would affect those people. The Jimmy Braddocks of the world who hand their money back into the public works office, guess what? They're not around anymore. Very, very few of them. And they're not the ones opposing the idea that SNAP shouldn't be used to purchase Twizzlers and soda. You have no shame. You're not embarrassed. And here's you know what? I think we should live in a society where you should be. If you are a grown, able-bodied adult and you have not supported yourself or your family for several years, let alone half a decade or a decade, we have lifetime welfare recipients, you should be ashamed. I'll go one step further. Especially if you're a man, you're not. You're not a man. You're failing to fulfill the basic role that we have been expected to fulfill since the beginning of time. should be ashamed. And yeah, that's one where I'll challenge your masculinity. We don't need that as a voting base. We need to change the culture of this country. Hey, if you liked this video, you can comment or hit like. And you know what, because you and I were a lot alike. Probably like dogs. I like dogs. If you like cats, I don't want you here. I'm not making videos for cat people. I told you, if you're a cat, I don't want you here. I'm not doing it. Not doing it for cat people. Dog person, click there. Cat person,